Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Smashified. I am Omni, and today I am joined by Chris.
Hello!
Andrew.
Hey.
And RetroSpecter.
Hello.
So, you were looking at the character which we codenamed Not Furry, and if you can't tell already, it is Sceptile, who is
he's not very
undoubtedly
furry.
Not furry. So, what you're looking at right now is more of a preliminary model sculpt, and it actually looks very different from the end result. So I'm going to let you talk about that, Chris, if you want to.
Well, we should talk about Not Furry. We're doing code names now for upcoming characters.
Yeah, we are doing code names because numbering them, it's sort of hard because we have so many of them running concurrently at a time. We're working on multiple characters at any given moment, so rather than trying to determine this one's going to come out next and this one's going to come out next, we just decided code names. So whichever one gets done first will come out next.
Yes.
And it's going to be easier that way. And plus, the code name is also probably going to be a hint in some obscure fashion.
Yeah.
So
like Sceptile, he's not furry at all.
Yes.
That code name came from us actually getting a little pestered from people who were saying, "Oh, what, you're just gonna do furries now?" Because we did Dixie Kong and then Crystal and then Lilac, a bunch of furry-esque characters, if you would. So
Dixie Kong doesn't really count. She's just a straight-up monkey.
I don't know if any of them do, but yeah. So Sceptile literally has no hair/fur, so that's why we came up with that name. And this is me, and I'm sculpting him right now. This was the original base sculpt where
lots of muscle, very buff. Quite a departure from the original model that we based it on, which was from X and Y.
Yeah, I guess you gotta swing some wide punches when you start off, and I was definitely going in with that sort of mindset to separate it from the original, but just to go as far as we could to see how far it could get without being too wild. I was actually, so I've done a lot of work with dinosaurs in illustration before, and so I have a pretty good mindset of like T-Rex and Velociraptor, like the big heavy hitters, and
yeah.
I sort of, I guess, based his anatomy off of that in a way. Like it feels a little Velociraptor, it feels like the thighs, especially the way everything's sort of built. So that's what I had in mind when I was doing this, and then, yeah, it was totally too far away from actually what Sceptile is.
Right.
And we got into a lot of discussions on what sort of species of reptile he is and what that would be like.
He's a Pokemon.
Well, Pokemon species of...
To get into that sort of philosophy, when it comes to the way characters are designed in Smash, there's a lot of actual variety in the amount of realism they take. And with the Pokemon in particular, they don't go that far into realism because Pokemon shapes can be pretty unrealistic, and so it's like inventing what anatomy that would be underneath the surface is a lot more difficult in some cases. So sometimes, like, look at Pikachu, there's nothing rodent-like about the way he's constructed, but they just kept it because that's the way he's shaped. So with Charizard, on the other hand, there's a lot more you can do with like standard dragon conventions, things like that. But with Sceptile, we just had to find the right balance, and hopefully we achieved it. You're going to be able to see at the end of the process. Or if you skipped ahead, like some of you tend to do, then you already know what it looks like, but by then you wouldn't have heard me say that. So those of you who are still listening right now, you're the best.
Comment saying I'm the best.
Do that. Tweet at us saying hashtag
the best.
Chris, the best.
What? Why me?
I don't know.
Don't do that. It's okay. So yeah, this is Sceptile. I enjoyed very much adding anatomy, which got stripped away. I guess I didn't at this point reference Charizard or Mewtwo or Lucario or anybody in the game. I was just kind of like thinking, oh, anatomy, let's go. Like I don't know. I have this library of anatomy knowledge in my head, and I just wanted to deploy it at its fullest strength. So that's
yeah. I think between the two of us, I'm the most readily wanting to like reference really, really heavily in what precedents we look at, and
I'm for it too.
Precedents, not presidents. But so I feel like sometimes I'm like Chris likes to do things more on impulse. I'm more of a planning person, so sometimes it's like you do something really, really wide swing, and then it's like maybe rein it in a little bit. Mm-hmm. So that's often the pattern.
Yeah, I think that was what sort of happened in this too. Ooh. Now we're at Andrew's.
And now we are looking at Andrew doing a UV unwrap, which is basically sectioning off different parts of the body so that it's in a like understandable form on which you can build a texture map.
That is some crazy perspective that's going on in the camera right now.
Yeah. We are getting really close to the model right now.
How do you like UV unwrapping, Andrew?
It's very tedious.
Yeah, it's definitely a long process.
It is fun. It can be fun sometimes.
It's probably more rewarding if you have a character that is very texture heavy that you have to end up painting. With Sceptile, he's a lot of solid colors, so it's probably not all that interesting of a process to do.
Also a character with less vertices as well.
Yeah, true. It's a very high poly model. Or I don't know if this would be considered high poly or mid poly, but...
for video gaming, it would be high poly, just because...
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. In general, I'd say it's mid poly, though.
Yeah, definitely.
And now the rigging. Which coming up a little bit after this, if you guys have been seeing on Twitter, I have been trying to get good at Blender, get acquainted with it at least, so I actually got to do the posing section of this, which is going to come up in here in maybe a minute or so, but you're using Rigify? Is that how you did this in Blender?
Yes, it's a very quick way of getting a rig to work on your character.
Isn't that great? Everything uses ify as a suffix. We can't get away from it. We've made a very conscious effort not to name more subsequent series whatever ified, but everyone on Twitter, whenever we come up with some sort of topic, they're like, whatever ified. And it's like, no, stop that. We're not going to call it that. But even Blender, that's the mindset. So, and this is weight painting. It's basically saying this part shouldn't move as much when you move the rig, basically. It deforms less. I guess the red is the part that doesn't move as much, or is it
the red is the part that is assigned to that part of the rig. So the more red, the more it moves.
Okay, so I got that completely wrong. And then, because I actually ended up drawing a pose concept on paper for the first time. I usually draw everything on my tablet, but I was actually out of the house when I came up with a pose idea, and we didn't end up using that pose at all. So this is the pose we went with.
You want to know what's funny? I was recently cleaning up our files for Patreon, where we released more content and we release our process. And back when we originally started Sceptile, which was May of last year, like original, I downloaded the Pokemon X and Y model for him and just posed a couple different poses and turned around. And it's funny because one of the poses we were digging back then happens to be very similar to the final pose.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't looked back at those.
It's not very good, but it's pretty similar.
Right, and when we say May, we weren't working on this since May. We started working very little on it in May, and then we just stopped working on it entirely for a good while. Yeah. Until I don't know when.
There were a couple characters we started way back then that we haven't touched since, so maybe you'll see them soon. Who knows?
Yeah. Right now we are looking at, after we did the pose, Chris brought it back into, I think this is ZBrush. So he's doing some more refined tweaks to the form, making some different design decisions, experimenting with leaf shapes, and we were thinking through, what do we use the leaves for? What does Sceptile use the leaves for? And in Pokemon, he actually uses them for cutting, so we ended up not going with the more wavy, sort of flexible design. They ended up being a lot more rigid by the end. But experimentation is all about trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. What are those things on his back? I've been wondering that this whole time. Are they pollen packs? What is that?
They're probably like spores or something. I don't know. Pokemon's got so many pointless anatomy parts. But it makes them look
I'd
cool.
say the farther you get into the newer generations, the more they start like tacking on parts.
Don't start anything.
Don't start, Omni. Don't want to start a fight in the comments. It's too late. People are already talking about it. Sceptile doesn't look as good as the other Pokemon in Smash.
I actually really enjoy those back balls, if you will. They are probably my favorite part of the design. I don't know about you guys, but this was the last generation I played Pokemon, 3rd generation. So Sceptile, I believe, was actually the one I wound up going with too. So he's got a little bit of history with me, and there was just something cool about the balance of And when you're talking character design, balance of color, having the cool green versus the warm yellow on the back, it's a nice balance and cool design.
And as far as like inclusion in Smash goes, I think grass is one of the main types that is no longer represented in the current game.
R.I.P. Ivysaur.
Yep. So it'd be cool to bring grass back into the picture with Sceptile specifically. I think he'd be a good fighter.
I have a question for you guys, though. Do you think that he's as demanded as he is because he's a really cool character, or because he's third generation Leaf and we already have a first generation Fire and a sixth generation Water? It's the middle.
I mean,
ground.
I have no idea, honestly.
It's
probably a mixture
I'd say
of
it's
both.
both.
Yeah.
They're leaning towards the latter.
Of the grass starters, he's probably one of the most viable for a fighter. But we're coming up closer to the end of the process. Right now, Chris is working on materials, just getting those squared away before we do another final pass for details. But I don't know if there's a lot to talk about with the materials.
Nope.
So, Retro, do you want to talk a bit about
music?
How you did the
music? Sure, no problem. It's basically it's a medley, and I actually made this song almost half a year ago. I think, funnily enough, around May. And it was actually a Smash theme made for Sceptile, and it consists of Little Root Town, Route 101, Oldale Town, Petalburg Town, and then the next route. I think it's 104 or something. But yeah, it was just a combination of all those. Originally, it was just the first two, but I decided to, since you start out with Trico, I felt like to go for a more nostalgic approach with just Ruby and Sapphire, which is why I made those first 5 songs. So I try to go for like a catchy upbeat battle theme. I'm not sure if you'd be able to hear this in Smash or not, but I did my best.
Very cool.
I think.
Yeah, Go ahead.
I was gonna say I think some of the Pokemon music in Smash is just some of the almost better music in Smash. I remember specifically like Pokefloats and Melee, and they had some good ones in Brawl too. I remember on the Pillar stage there were some good ones, and even in the newest game they have a theme that they played in the reveal trailer for Greninja that was just amazing. So I have a pretty good recollection of just great Pokemon music, and I think this sort of fits into that trope.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the Pokemon music in Smash tends to be more orchestral of an interpretation on those melodies, so it's fun to hear different genres as opposed to that. I mean, is there not a lot left to talk about as far as the process? Right now we're just sort of refining the materials, changing up some of the colors. The color balance on this character was a lot trickier than it should have been.
Well, we played around with... Well, there's been a couple of different Sceptiles. Different art directions. There's the original...
In the anime, in Pokemon.
The anime, Pokemon. Yeah. He's all over the place. I really dig the one in Pokemon. The sort of materials they had there I was interested in. I wound up actually recreating the back balls, like the ones from Pokemon. But bam! There it is.
There it is. Just in time for Pokemon's, almost just in time for Pokemon's 20th anniversary. We were actually hoping to get this out last week, but it didn't happen, so... Close enough, right?
Wow.
Close enough.
You look so green.
Alright guys, so thank you so much for watching this process video. Follow all of us on social media, do all that stuff. Links in the description below, as always. And if you haven't watched past episodes of Smashified, then you can go ahead and check those out. Be sure to check out RetroSpecter's channel. He does a lot of music, and also be sure to check out Splatshine, which is one of our other series that we work on. Check out Patreon. Consider becoming a patron. Gumroad.
Yes.
Do we still not have anything on Gumroad?
No. But I'm going to be
We're
doing
going to put our brushes on there, I promise.
There's going to be a tutorial soon. But seriously, check out Patreon. We're releasing so many things. And we have a contest going on 2 weeks from now. If you're a Patreon subscriber, we're going to be giving away 2 copies of, 1 copy of Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue. Giveaway for free if you're just a Patreon subscriber, supporter, whatever you are. So do
Patron. The word is patron. That's very simple. Everybody get your commentary mode on.
I'm commentary.
Get all super enthusiastic.
I am commentary. Get my hyper up.
All right.
Pew pew.